Hello everyone, greetings to all watching the video. I welcome you all to another episode of Convo with Apricus. Friends, this session is again with Dr. Shalini Rohilla Panigrahi, who is Assistant General Manager in HUDCO, Housing and in Urban Development Corporation in India. She will enlighten us on Indian Bankruptcy Code. Let's start the discussion, ma'am.
Thank you, Rishu. I'm just sharing my screen. So we will start with Indian Bankruptcy Code, Module 1. So the topics which we will cover in this module are a brief introduction about the code, what is the basic objective of this code, what was the prior laws to the code, like what was the old law, and now what is the new law. So it is a comparison of old law versus the new law. What are the principal features of Indian Bankruptcy Code, IBC? The chapter 2 will be covering about the insolvency ecosystem, the four main pillars of the institutional infrastructure, provisions of the code, the constitution, power and functions of IBBI, regulation making power, inspection and investigation, something about information utilities, the registration functions of these utilities, key design features, who are the adjudicating authorities, and who are insolvency professionals. Now let's start the chapter number 1, lesson number 1. It will cover these four aspects: a brief introduction, objective of the code, what was prior to this code, what was the old law. Only then we will understand why this IBC came. We have to understand what was the earlier laws prevalent, which dealt with the insolvency. Principal features of the code. So let's begin. Now, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, it's a code, not a law, because it's covering the entire law regarding the insolvency. It's an umbrella legislation. Insolvency resolution of all entities, which will cover both corporate as well as individuals. Right now, the provisions for the corporate are they are notified, but still the individuals provisions under this code are yet to be notified. So we have to we will concentrate mainly on corporate insolvency. So this code came into the force on December 1st, 2016. Insolvency resolution and bankruptcy of the personal guarantors also we will study under this chapter. Insolvency and bankruptcy provisions for other category of individuals, which I already told, is yet to be notified. So we will not, we can't, that is not of much relevance until they get notified. So what was the aim of this code? To bring greater coherence in the law. Earlier, the law was scattered. We have to see the company law and other laws which were dealing with the insolvency. So a wider perspective was covered under this code, and they wanted to bring all the insolvency procedure under a single code to facilitate the application of consistent and lucid provisions to different stakeholders affected by the business. The IBC, before the IBC, there were laws like Presidency Town Insolvency Act 1909, the Provincial Insolvency Act 1920. Now they are repealed because the provisions, because these codes are no longer functional and they are not that relevant, because they are not solving the problem which is occurred due to the insolvency of these corporate personalities. Till now, 11 amendments have been made in the company law to cover the to deal this problem of insolvency. Similarly, which I discussed in my last lectures, the RDDBI Act, the Recovery Due to Debt Due to the Banks and Financial Institution Act 1993, and the Sarfasi Act. These acts were mainly came into the force to solve the defaults which were created by the corporate debtors. So a need was felt to have a new codified legislation which covered all these problems. The provisions are coming in force in phases because this is such a big code. It is taking time because institutions have to be developed to make it functional. In every state, there has to be like NCLTs, the appellate authorities. So it is not a single day job. It will take years to get properly come into the force. So this code has basically, it has ensured freedom of entity, freedom to exit or discontinue the business. The entities which are under insolvency, the main problem was that they, with this earlier acts, they used to like sell them off, sell the assets. They were concentrating on the selling of assets and just clearing the debts. But this code came with the objective of reviving these entities because they the potential entities were also sold off in the which were in the debts. They were sold off in the earlier acts. But under this code, this problem of getting them revived was solved. What was the foundational objective of the enactment of this code? This code is basically to consolidate and to amend the laws relating to reorganization and insolvency resolution of corporate persons. Corporate persons, we will define, we will see earlier what are the corporate persons. It will also cover the partnership firm and individuals which are yet to be notified in a time-bound manner. This time-bound manner is very important. Earlier in these laws of this RDBI Act and this Safasi Act, the defaults were like they were kept on lingering. There was no time-bound procedure. So a need was felt to have this code, umbrella legislation, IBC code, which is solving this problem of the like it will be time-bound procedure. 180 days are given for solving this problem, like to resolve the issue. 180 days. We will when we see the code provisions, it's a time-bound manner. The maximization of the assets of such corporate person is made to promote entrepreneurship, availability of credit and balance, the interest of all the stakeholders, including alteration in the order of priority of the payment of government dues. So basically, it is promoting the companies which are in debts, even they are revived under this code. They are not just basically they are selling off the assets, but still they are trying that some resolution plan comes up, and those companies which have potential, they are revived also under this code. So this is a brilliant features which was earlier missing in the earlier laws. One of the main other objective was to establish an Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. This board will see that all the activities carried out under this code in a meticulous manner, like professionals are appointed, all the entities are working properly, all the procedure is followed properly. So this is a function of the board. Now, first objective which we see is the resolution. It is always a need was felt that when the company, when the corporate debtor is under some default, in the earlier acts, it was seen that they were like selling off the assets of those companies. But under this code, the problem which was identified and a resolution plan was made. Second object was that whatever the assets of the corporate debtor, to gain their maximum value out of it, to promote entrepreneurship, not to sell off those companies, but to revive them so that people get jobs and balancing of the interest. Earlier it was debtor driven, but now it is creditor driven. And to establish a board and for the matters connected. And so these are the foundational objective of the IBC code. So what was the earlier law and what is the new law? A bit of comparison I have made. Earlier laws was dealing with individual insolvency and bankruptcy under the pre-independence period. That was not covering the corporate insolvency. For corporate functions, the Companies Act was having the provisions like winding up, liquidation was present in the Companies Act 1956. But now it has been changed and the Companies Law 2013 is in force. Although Company Law 1956 The sections relating to winding up and liquidation under 2013 Act were not notified. Hence, till the enactment of the code, the provisions related to Companies Act 1956 is still prevailing. So there were different acts which were covering the like individual insolvency in some other act, corporate insolvency in the Companies Act. So in earlier laws, winding up could be triggered in the Companies Act if the company was unable to pay the debt. Once the company was wound up, liquidation would follow, and there was no process of reorganization of the company. There was only a procedure for liquidation. Liquidation means selling of the assets, just selling of the assets. No plan was there to revive that company. Moreover, liquidation was a very long procedure. So this was the earlier laws. So how IBC is different? In IBC, there are provisions for individuals, there are provisions for corporate debtors, there are provisions for partnership firms. So they are covering all these under one umbrella legislation. The provision existing in the Companies Act will still prevail until this IBC comes in full force. The winding up under IBC is not triggered because of inability of payment of debt, either under the Companies Act nor under the Companies Act 2013. However, for involuntary dissolution due to the non-solvency related reasons are still governed by Companies Act. Now, earlier laws, the Companies Act also contains the scheme of financial construction as approved by NCLT. These are voluntary schemes of arrangements and compromise with the creditors. There were acts like SICA. SICA was Sikh Industrial Companies Act. Under this act, the Sikh companies were allowed to voluntarily execute their liquidation process because these companies were good for nothing. So it was better to sell them off. So still this act was not that fruitful, but it failed because that moratorium period was unending. What is moratorium? When the company is under liquidation or under this insolvency, all the legal proceedings and other proceedings will be stopped. But this moratorium period was misused by the companies. So this act was it was rejected, and it was not that fruitful. Various voluntary mechanisms like RBI circulars in form of instructions to the banks, corporate debt restructuring failed. So these laws under different enactments, laws, SICA, all these acts could not solve the problem of the resolution. So a need was felt, and this IBC was enacted. With the enactment of this IBC code, RBI has also revised its circular dated March 2018 and led to withdrawal of all the previous mechanism. Now everything will be covered under the Indian Bankruptcy Code. Again, let us recall what are the principal features. For the corporate debtors who are facing the insolvency, there are two processes. One is CIRP, Insolvency Resolution Process. If the resolution process fails, the second phase is liquidation. Liquidation means selling of the assets. When insolvency is triggered, when is insolvency triggered? Whenever there is a default, the insolvency will be triggered. So the company itself can go in for the insolvency, or the corporate debtor can itself go for insolvency, or the financial creditor can file the application for insolvency. And in the second phase, partnership firm, etc. can also go. While winding up under the Companies Act 1956 could be triggered by the ability to pay the debt, and rehabilitation process under SICA was triggered once the net worth company has eroded. One of the key feature of the IBC is the earlier detection of insolvency. Hence, unlike the previous, insolvency is triggered under IBC by a simple default of 1 lakh as provided. But now this 1 lakh has 1 lakh is minimum and 1 crore is the maximum. So this, whenever there is a default of 1 lakh to 1 crore, 1 lakh is minimum, 1 crore is maximum. Whenever there is a default, that triggers the IBC. The process of insolvency starts when the admission order by the adjudicating authorities, NCLT. When NCLT admits that there is a default. From that day, the procedure starts. 180 days starts from that day. Under the departure of this regime, displacement of the debtor in position approach with the creditor in control. Now, the creditor who has given loan to the company, debtor company, is in the command. He is driving the insolvency proceedings. Earlier, it was debtor driven. Whenever we see the DRT proceedings, it is governed by debtor. Whatever he wants, that happens. But here, the creditor is in full control because he has given his money. So he has every right to get that money back. Hence, when the process starts, the process of existing board starts, the power of existing regime of the board of directors are suspended. Now, what happens when the CIRP process, that is the insolvency process, starts? The entire company, that is the board of directors of that company, gets suspended. And who is in control of that company? IRP, interim resolution professional. Now he will manage that company as a going concern. Going concern means this company is not sold off, it is not liquidated, it is going on. If some resolution plan is successful, some bidder comes and buys that company and settles off all the dues, so that company still exists. So this is the basic feature of this code, to revive the company, not to sell it off. Earlier laws wanted to sell off the companies, liquidate that company. But this law came with a different approach. The IP that is resolution professional, interim resolution professional, works under the control of committee of creditors. Who is committee of creditors? The financial creditors. They form a group. If there is a group of financial creditors, suppose there are more than 2-3 banks, they have credited the loan to some company. So they are the financial creditors, and they form a committee out of the financial creditors, form a committee which is known as committee of creditors. Now they will command whatever they want, that will happen. IP will work under their instructions. There will be proper voting for everything. So what are the basic features? To preserve the assets for a collective benefit of creditors. CIRP is achieved by way of resolution as approved by committee of creditors and the adjudicating authority, which is the NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal. If the resolution fails, the second process is liquidation. IBC also provides an institutional infrastructure to help to achieve its objects. The institutional structure of the IBC is very important to understand. It contains the interim professionals, insolvency professional agencies, which are controlling and regulating these insolvency professionals who will conduct the IBC proceedings, and insolvency professional entities. So this code also contains the organization of these professionals. What will be their qualification, who will pay them salary, how they will be appointed, everything is given under this code. Then one important thing is, for one of the pillar of this IBC code is information utilities. Whatever information the creditor is supplying, that will be stored under the information utilities. Now AA is adjudicating authority. Whenever in future we will refer to AA, we will refer as adjudicating authority. Under this code is NCLT. What is NCLT? National Company Law Tribunals, where the IBC proceedings are handled. And National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, which is if a person is agreed by NCLT order, they will approach the Appellate Tribunal and Supreme Court. Finally, the NCLT, NCLAT, and if the order, if still we are agreed, we will go to Supreme Court. How we read this code? IBC is a comprehensive and systematic economic reform. It is basically one of the economic reforms of the country, because it is consolidating the existing laws which were in different places, different acts. Now one code is covering all the insolvency process. So we have not to search other acts. Only under one umbrella legislation, we are getting all rules, regulations, how the insolvency will be carried out. IBC gives a power to central government. It is very important. It has granted the power to our central government to make rules, because IBC is nothing without rules. One is act, other are regulations. Regulations are made by central government. IBC gives the power to central government to make rules to identify the matters. For example, the IBC provides for initiation of insolvency process of corporate debtor by creditor and debtor itself. Now, which are notified by central government. Detailed procedure is also given under this code. Not only legislation, but procedure also. How the procedure will be carried out. How the creditor will file the application before the codes. Everything is given in this code. Since this enactment, the code has been amended 5 times. It's a very dynamic law. Every now and then the changes are taking place. Whenever you go through this IBC website, you will see everyday changes. So this is a very dynamic and a very upcoming law. So it's a very small presentation. I am giving a self-evaluation assessment also, whatever we have covered. What are the objective of IBC? Write any 5. What are the earlier laws enacted prior to IBC? You will be able to answer these questions. What are the principal feature of this code and what are the main amendments? So I end my session here, and it is just giving you a broad perspective, very broad perspective. We will go in detail in our other slides in which I have prepared a full module of IBC. So that will be very relevant for our law students who want to practice in IBC, our lawyers, and other professionals who want to pursue with the IBC, because very less has been studied under this act. So I will end my session here. And these answers I will give you in the next session. You can take this self-assessment evaluation assignment after this presentation. Thank you. You're muted.
Thank you. Thank you for such a wonderful session. I hope the audience will surely get benefited from the information given in the session, and they will develop the interest in the subject also. Thank you so much.